Thank you, Lucas. So first I have to provide some preparation for myself here. All right, thanks. So I have a simple message here, and let's see how that will fly. Fully agentic AI is no longer mainly limited by the capability of the LLMs. The harder questions are, what context do we put into that? 2, how do we adjust and structure our software development around those? And 3, how do we build trust and governance around those? I will be walking through 3 foundations in this talk to address this. Context engineering, the foundation of context engineering, agent integrated development, and 3, governance and security. So I would like to start with the pace of development. February this year was a very special month for me. It marked a milestone that I knew it was coming, but I still was kind of surprised to see that it was there all of a sudden. Within the span of 14 days, 4 flagship models were released by Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. The point of this slide is not to compare the benchmark evals and see which model outperformed or improved which benchmark by how much. The point is that these models have become so powerful and the capabilities are converging quite fast. The main question for us at large enterprise is now, what do we do to overcome the limitations and the bottlenecks to start using these models effectively? And this example makes this shift quite clear. This is from the blog post that Anthropic people released and published the same day that they released the Opus 4.6 model. Probably you all have seen this. A team of AI agents built a working C compiler. They worked autonomously in thousands of sessions, consumed more than 2 billion tokens, costed more than $20,000, and the output was significant. Whether or not your use case is very similar to this is not the point. And I'm not going to argue that you should do and structure your way of working like this. The point is that these multi-agent autonomous systems are now a reality way beyond the theoretical discussions that we had earlier. And now for us, the time is to set up our way of working, the context, and governance to start using them effectively. So the main transition point for me in this talk is, as of April 2026, the model capabilities is no longer the main bottleneck. It doesn't mean that the models are perfect. It just means that we have a shift in the center of gravity. And now the harder questions for us have to be there to put the right context, to clarify our intent and the validation of the answer, and to build trust around these systems in our ecosystem. So I will be walking through these 3 foundations, and my message is that these 3 are not to be seen as independent components or topics in this work. It's rather they are reinforcing each other, and if one of them is weak, the whole scaling of use of AI will not be safe, or it will be very difficult. So let me start by this question. How many of you, or let me phrase it like this, have you felt frustration over AI not doing what you wanted? Yeah? Just a few of you. All others are like always happy with AI. Okay, then I think you are in the minority as far as I'm connected with the people around myself. The context, I think one thing I can at least agree, if you haven't even been frustrated, is that what we put into the model determines what the model will do at the end, right? So the context is not just the prompt that we write to it. It's instructions, it's the knowledge, and this is a very important part for people who are working in the enterprise. We have a lot of legacy documentations. We are working guardrails, constraints on what the solution should be, how the solution should work with the other existing solutions, products, and so on. And all of this comes into the knowledge part. And then the tools, how the LLM should interact with the system outside of it. So all of this makes the context engineering problem a first-class engineering problem rather than writing a good prompt exercise. And this is my probably favorite picture of the context engineering, or how I will call it, context foundation. So we have many different data types at different data sources, capturing different types of information, from the requirements to the specifications to the studies, reports that we write, analysis of different alternative solutions, the source code testing, and at the end, maybe the description of the solution and user guide. All of them are scattered. They are not like locally centered or centrally placed at one position, one place, one data center that you can go and start using that. And what I'm arguing is that a good context engineering cannot be the responsibility of the end user. It should be seen as an infrastructure problem. And what it means is that in this structure, we are going to continuously ingest the knowledge from different data sources into something that we call context foundation. And here we have centralized knowledge repositories that can be easily exposed via established interfaces, in this case, MCP Gateway being a pioneer one. A very important aspect of this is enterprise identity-based access control. We want the system, the knowledge, to have, or people to have the same access to this knowledge as they have to the original data source. And this has to be solved in the infrastructure level, and the end users who are connected via front-end agents, such as coding assistants, Cloud Code, Amazon Kiro, GitHub Copilot, and name it, M365 Copilot, and maybe some custom agents that we have built in the companies. The users will connect to this context foundation via these front-end agents with not much problem. So it shouldn't make it difficult to connect via Cloud Code or via M365 Copilot. The foundation should support both of them quite readily. And this is where the shift can happen. And suddenly, tens of thousands of developers can see the context that they can use and plug in and start being effective in what they are doing. And this is also very much connected to agent harness. So LLM has the prompt, has the memory. We have the tools, maybe some integrated tools, and some exposed via MCP servers. Maybe we have skills, hooks, etc. to instruct and adjust our kind of information and put it into the LLM. I want to kind of pick on two aspects here, and I think this is important as we are at least in this track, and that is the MCP servers and the skills. MCP servers, with all the problems that it has, such as the token effectiveness problem, they are still one of the widely adopted interfaces that the AI suppliers are giving us with a very good governance models. It wasn't there 6 months ago, but now choose whatever level supplier you want, and they have as a concept for MCP governance, what MCP servers the LLM should be connected and what not. But what the shift that we have seen, and this is a very important kind of thinking in that, we are seeing a shift from rigid agents that you define a prompt, instructions, tools for a specific agent, and then you use it when you need, to a more dynamic specialization, where you have a general agent with a general instruction, and you are connecting it, or the LLM will decide to use a specific skills, and suddenly it will become a special on something. It will do the task, and it will revert back to its general mode, and then can capture another skill and do that. So the skills is what kind of expertise we need the LLM to have in solving the problem. And the maybe important point for me in this slide is that skills are not to replace MCP servers. It's rather MCP service can be called from the skills. Skills is expertise. MCP service should be still the gate to connect to external systems. This is how it is now. I think the journey has been so dynamic that no one can say what we will have in a year. And we as a kind of user should be ready to adjust and use the new interfaces as they emerge. So that was the context engineering. And now I want to focus on the agent integrated development, on what we, like the users, should do. The first part was more on the infrastructure, if you want, side of the thing, how we can centrally provide to the users. The second one is me as a user. What is it that I should do? I should change my behavior, my way of working. This is a kind of quote that I have taken from the same blog post that I mentioned earlier, the working C compiler. We have probably seen that news, that one-liner, many, many times, but maybe as not often this part. Both of them are coming from the same blog post. What happened before the agents got the instruction that, okay, go ahead and solve this problem for me? What did these people do? Or I think it was a person or team going with the experiment. And it's quite clear if you look into that. It's writing high quality test cases, plus some other practicalities. But the main important point is the test cases. How would the agent, the LLM, know that, okay, now I have a good, valid solution? That brings me on this core message that agents fail on ambiguity, not ability. So traditional way of working would be that we are writing the prompt, the LLM will go and write the code and test it and then fail, maybe repeat on that and so on. But that's too loose for LLMs and powerful models. And even there are differences between, say, cloud code and the OpenAI models on how innovative they can be, how conservative they can be. But we as a user cannot rely on the model to be always guessing what we want. The more stronger alternative is that we write the specifications and clearly define our intent, clarify whatever unclear, write the test cases, and then implement the code, and at the end, validate and verify. So my favorite mention or the framing of this is that we want to be deterministic in what we want the agent to do, and then the execution is not deterministic, and the validation at the end needs to be deterministic. And of course, I'm not saying that we should, like as a human, sit down and write all of this. We are going to use the models in all these phases. It's just that where do we focus most? Is it to go through the line of the code one by one, or is it more on the specifications and put time into what is it that we believe is, or we think, or we want the correct solution look like? So this is a shift, and this is a very important one. And when I said that February was a kind of milestone for me, it was about this part. And it doesn't really matter how much we have talked about that, how much we have seen, how great demos we have seen. It just captures us in surprise that, okay, the moment that we thought is coming is here now. What do we do now? It's like our way of working is not really handling this. Now we should do something else. So this brings the other dimension of the agent up. If the agents, skills, configurations, tools, and so on are assets, we should also manage them. We have to govern them properly. So think of Agent Hub as an NPM, but for agents and the packages and the artifacts that we have there to share, to govern, and reuse. And why do we need that? It's because the agent knowledge is trapped in our repositories, in our local machines. In the base case, maybe teams are sharing that, but that doesn't really reach beyond that in an organization that we have tens of thousands of developers in very different organizations that somehow doing different things. And the solution for that is Agent Hub, that we package where we are developing, building the agents, we govern it, share, and reuse and discover. And by doing so, the knowledge compounds and not rebuilt every time from scratch. So that was the second foundation. And if the two first foundations were about making Gen AI effective, the last one is about governance and how do we build safety and security around that. And it's always helpful to start with the business dimension when we are talking about the governance. So the main point is that not all use cases require the same type of governance. So there's a business decision at the end, and that is, for me, impacted by three factors: the deployment, on-prem or cloud, the autonomy, whether it's autonomous or human in the loop, and the last one, the usage context. What is it that we are doing with AI? And these have implications on the different risk dimensions, such as copyright, trade compliance, the information security, privacy, everything that we can think of. And this slide here is here just to remind us that Agentic AI has a quite broad risk surface. I'm not going to walk through all of these risks, but it's just that when we are working at a big company with a lot of established way of working, processes, customers, products, and so on, this has to be really considered carefully and addressed professionally. And this is my favorite governance slide. This is MCP governance. And the core message here is that trust developers prevent unintentional harm. So we trust in our developers that they will not do harm intentionally, although unintentional harm can happen. And inside parentheses, if developers wanted to do harm, they could do otherwise without AI as well. So how do we make sure that the unintentional harm reduces or we mitigate that? Is education and upskilling. Continuously educating the task force. The main pillar of the governance is in the middle here, ownership and accountability, and we separate that between the developer to make sure that the MCP server is secure and safe and follows the guardrails and recommendations and the requirements that we have, and the user who knows that the use of a specific server is okay for my use case and my business. And therein, a big component is data and AI approval, because the data exposure and the use of AI is where a lot of these risk dimensions that I mentioned become real. And these are enforced by the help of MCP gateway, for instance, for the remote MCP servers, the agent hub that I mentioned, and the clear requirements and communication of that. So what I'm going to kind of finish is that the future of agentic AI, and the future is basically now, is no longer mainly kind of limited by the capability of the models. We are not waiting for even a stronger models. That will be happening anyhow. It's rather we have to shift our work with the context and intent and software development and governance and security to use them effectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasser. Really, really interesting presentation indeed. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And we do have some time for some questions, if that's all right for you.
Absolutely.
And I want to start off by asking you, like, your talk shows really how AI in software development is moving from simple like assistants to more agentic systems that can work more independently. So what surprised you the most about how quickly this shift is actually happening? And what does this mean for developers on an everyday basis at Ericsson at this point in time?
I think the surprise is that we can build more strong systems quicker than what we can consume. We can use the cloud code and all the other great things. We can fine-tune our own stuff. We can build agents that do a lot of things. But what do we do with that? So the shift for me, and I think many of us in Ericsson, was that February morning we wake up and Opus 4.6 is here. And now you suddenly feel that, oh, I can do everything. I can do whatever I want. I'm no longer limited by the knowledge or the practice that I knew as a Nasser. Now the possibility is there for me to do everything. What do I do now? How do I spend my time? Where do I focus? And that is a shift that I think is continuously happening, and we feel internally as well as in the community that we have to work on.
Right. And a little bit connected to that topic, what would you say are the most important like personal traits for developers to have in order to adopt this new way of working within software development? Are you working with like any like change management, or how do you accelerate this adoption of this new technology?
Yeah, of course, we have transformation programs, and even there we take one direction and work on that sometime, and we work on another direction because the previous one was not effective and so on. And I think that when it comes from the company perspective, that goes to the context engineering, as I mentioned. So that is one of the big projects that one should think about, as well as the way of working, the processes, and so on. From the developer perspective is to learn and adjust to the ways that we can use the agents. What question do I ask? How do I frame? Where do I spend my time to check the kind of what agent does and the input that I give to it?
And are you meeting any like resistance or any skeptics about this workflows at all, or how is it looking?
Of course, there are some groups who are more resistant, and resistant in a way that maybe the joy is somewhere else, and we have some differences on where the joy is. But I would say that the majority of the task force that I work with, they are really keen into using AI and understanding what it can help and how to use that.
Right. And lastly, do you think, are we moving the way to specify what the computer should do from programming to specification instead?
Absolutely. I think that's the shift that we have to think on. The programming is, I think, you could call that programming software tree. But the shift is, where can you actually verify and be sure that you have the best knowledge, you have the best kind of use of your time. I think that's on the first part, on clarifying the intent and the specification rather than looking at the code. And this will take some time for us to move on from peer-reviewed code writing to kind of writing the intent clearly and understanding it. But that's going to be here no matter how long time it will take.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yep,
and
thank you.
Nasser, with that being said, we want to hand over this gift to you, which is a handy umbrella, and giving a warm applause. Thank you so much.
Thank
Nasser.
you so much.